You are incompetent, incapacitated, and the most unreliable human being. Perhaps it is something you learned when you worked as a legal officer for the Oppenheimers. You are here pretending as though you believe in South Africa's case, yet it is a lie. When you prematurely ascended to power in 2018, many people, including the leadership and membership of the EFF, hoped that you will bring some degree of stability. It has now been 3 years since you took office, and we can all say that you have not achieved anything that is worth mentioning. We have successfully displaced the Gupta criminal syndicate, which had a lot of power under President Zuma, but it is now evident that the Guptas have been replaced by a very powerful white capitalist capture of the Ruperts, Oppenheimers, Stephen Koshev, the Minels, and all other white people who played a central role in buying the conference of the ruling party in 2017. We want to state categorically that any leader of our country who owes loyalty to colonial settlers and white state capturers is defining himself as an enemy of the people. We will isolate and ultimately defeat all puppets of the white capitalist establishment. Despite the PR stunts and showmanship you demonstrated during the State of the Nation address on the 11th of February 2021, there is honestly nothing to celebrate under your leadership. The reality is that the conditions of our people are getting worse, and whilst Corona has worsened them, it is still not to blame for your general incompetence. The only thing your administration is competent at is the protection and benefits of white capitalist establishment. This is evidently payback for the fact that white people, even under apartheid, protected and promoted you, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa. Honorable Speaker, you will recall that when young black people were being exiled and killed in the 70s, particularly after June 16 uprising, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa was already serving in the boards of white companies, particularly the Urban Foundation belonging to the Oppenheimers and the Ruperts. It is no surprise that when he announced the first lockdown, he announced fake commitments of billions of donations from the Ruperts and Oppenheimers, which never reached our people. When he was elected as a president in 2018, the unemployment rate in South Africa was 26.1%. More than 8.8 million people, mainly black youth, willing and ready to work, were unemployed. Today, unemployment rate has increased to 30.1%, and the number of unemployed people has increased to well over 10 million. Under his leadership, more than 2 million people who had jobs when he took office no longer have jobs. This means, Mr. President, that in the same way you claim victories for an increase in jobs, you must also take full responsibility when more than 2 million breadwinners lose their jobs. Despite empty promises at investment summits, the economy under Mr. Ramaphosa is shrinking, and South Africa was already in recession for 3 quarters before the outbreak of coronavirus. The last time South Africa experienced a positive quarterly economic growth was 2019 second quarter. We experienced recession well before the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is made worse by the fact that government's contribution to the GDP continues to decline due to the patently foolish and unscientific reduction of the budget. We warned that despite the misleading talk by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Ibrahim Patel, South Africa's industrial capacity is not growing. Instead, it continues to shrink as there is no coherent and cogent industrial policy for industrial expansion or localization because of Mr. Ramaphosa's incompetence. You are incompetent. You must accept or untwapala. When we were confronted with COVID-19 pandemic, we could not even manufacture the most basic of things like masks and sanitizers. South Africa has spent more than 30 billion purchasing PPEs, and this has benefited foreign companies. Even when local producers tried to locally produce PPEs, your government overlooked them and empowered foreign companies. In addition, your preference of white people is deeply hurtful and the most dangerous of all your trades. It is demonstrated by almost all strategic positions in state-owned companies being handed over to white people and mostly males, whom, despite their incompetence and corruption, are protected by the capitalist media establishment. Mr. President, your energy plan is a disaster and will not bring about the necessary energy stability needed to develop South Africa's economy. Despite your misleading commitments that Eskom will not be privatized, what you said here during SONA is essentially the gradual privatization of energy generation, and we all know that white capitalist establishment will again be the biggest beneficiary, whilst thousands of workers will lose their jobs. Eskom's future lies in the establishment of its own renewable energy division, instead of its dependency on greedy independent power producers. The current model has dismally failed and has worsened Eskom financial problems. We were told that more than 1.2 trillion investment was marked over a period of 5 years, and so far the so-called raised investments are imaginary and only exist in your not so big head. In 2018, Mr. Ramaphosa committed to finalizing the allocation of spectrum to reduce barriers to entry, promote competition, and reduce data costs. The same commitment was repeated in February and June 2019 and February 2020. This process has been mismanaged so much that any effort to license the spectrum will be riddled with corruption, incompetence, and not lead to reduction of data cost. Under your watch, Mr. President, corruption is on the rise. For instance, only 26% of the national and provincial departments and state-owned entities manage to produce quality financial statements. According to Auditor General, the financial health of government continues to be alarming. Irregular, wasteful, and fruitless expenditure continues to increase. The COVID-19 corruption of PPEs is also evidence that you cannot deal with corruption. According to Auditor General COVID-19 Special Report, there is widespread corruption, fraud, abuse of power in your government, sponsored and monitored by people including your cabinet members. In fact, your own ministers refuse to answer important questions from Parliament. The key example is this one who just spoke before me, who pretend to be knowing everything about this pandemic, yet he knows nothing. He refused to answer questions using non-disclosure agreements signed with pharmaceuticals. We have written to the Speaker to demand that all details, including prices, quantities, contracted middlemen and middlewomen in the procurement of vaccines, must be disclosed to Parliament and the people of South Africa. Everyone who stands to personally benefit from the vaccine rollout must face public scrutiny to avoid the repeat of corruption in rollout of PPEs. The truth, however, is that all of this will not happen because of your incompetence, Mr. Ramaphosa. Wapalelwa, udubantwa pala, autsebe selo, urata dilo, udumechu uba president, utsiba auna le capacity ya uba class representative. We've had to lodge complaints with the public protector about shenanigans that occurred in the financial sector conduct authority, where commissioners have squandered millions of members' pension fund. They've used these funds to enrich themselves, their own law firms, and their family members. The surpluses and unclaimed pensions should be used to procure vaccine. You could unwind the pension fund, reverse the unjustifiable legal and curator fees, and utilize the remaining surpluses for the benefit of workers and all people. The reality is that in any event, these funds belong to the workers. But again, because of your incompetency, you will not use your regulatory power to save the lives of workers from the devastating impact of COVID-19 pandemic. This inability to act is what gives way to corruption and squandering of people's resources by greedy officials and capitalists. Amidst all this, under you, Mr. Ramaphosa, white companies are the biggest beneficiaries of state contracts. Black companies are all marginalized under the racist suspicion that they are all corrupt simply because they are black. Isalu Eba president, all the people, including Baba Usapotile, they are being pushed out. All those people who were successful in the previous administrations ba le batho ba di business borakgwebo potlana ba baso ka mokana ga bona magwa a bakoba le bao ne ba ena le di BEE. They are now being taken out of those companies because they've gained a wide arrogance under your leadership and they've undermined all black people. Yeng khatlang kudu ke eng tshegishang ibile ntsigirita le bosheo ke gore ba bantsho ba ba o fileng tšhelete le bona they are at the receiving end gore magwa a bantšha dikgwebong ka gore magwa ba ra ba sa ba nida ba tshwere komang ka nna ka the form of a president. Despite undisputed evidence that there was massive corruption in the purchase of PPEs, there is not a single public official who has been arrested and convicted by the NDPP, whom we're told is the most competent of all. It is evident now that the only thing the current NDPP was appointed for was to withdraw criminal charges against the rogue unit led by Jamnandas, which continues to control government and media to tell lies about president's opponents and project him as a demigod. Mr. President, we cannot continue to bury our heads in the sand against growing and now believable allegation that some prominent members of the judiciary are in the payroll of the white capitalist establishment. We cannot ignore the allegations that some of the judges have received bribes through SSA Project Justice, as well as from CR17 donations, which by all standards and measures amounted to massive corruption, money laundering, and racketeering. The judiciary must know that they are not above the Constitution. Ukano ba judge mara o modimo ka o fela bona asanga ba lwele nagae ba ile sekolong gore ba be di judge. There is nothing so special that gives them powers to think they can amend this constitution and take the rights of people away. Worse, Babibaki contradicted in their own judgments because they think they are untouchable. They must know that if they continue to think that they are the law but not interpreters of the law, then the people will rise against such few judges who have made themselves the law and are conspiring with politicians to deal with the opponents of the current establishment. There is an uninterrupted continuity of the state capture, which looks like all along you have been learning from the best. At the rate these allegations are going, we'll have to establish another commission of inquiry to investigate massive corruption under your leadership, and we'll have to conduct a closer scrutiny of our judiciary. Judges too can be investigated, and they need to know that they must make the law and they shouldn't think that they are above the law. Mr. President, in your PR efforts, you continue to mention that you have made a fiscal intervention of 500 billion to fight the corona pandemic and its consequences, and that is plainly not a reflection of reality. We warned earlier on about the urban legend and failed PR exercise that there was 500 billion injected in the fiscus as an economic response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We illustrated that the 500 billion was made of 70 billion tax deferments, 200 billion loan guarantees used to benefit few white businesses, 40 billion support business with wages paid from UIF, and other monies were sought from reprioritization of the existing budget. The most tragic decision taken by your government was to borrow 100 billion from IMF, which despite your denials will lead to the micromanagement of South Africa's fiscal policy. This means under your watch, Mr. President, South Africa's sovereignty against imperialist micromanagement has been compromised. It is an illusion that we should only focus our fight against corona only in the borders colonially defined as South Africa, whilst our brothers and sisters in the entire continent have nowhere to source assistance. The South African government should, as a permanent solution, build a state-owned pharmaceutical company and capacity in collaboration with progressive countries such as Cuba and Russia. Because undisputed science has illustrated that the Russian vaccine has higher efficiency rates, and as possible and sound storage requirements. That is where we should refocus our attention. It is now difficult to believe that your insistence on Johnson & Johnson vaccine is genuine because Johnson & Johnson has subcontracted your CR17 funders to be part of the manufacturers of the vaccine, which does not have the necessary efficiency and capacity to insulate our people from the virus. If science says the Russian vaccine is the most impactful vaccine against corona, why are we not pursuing it? The provision of vaccine to South Africans must include an equal effort to provide vaccines to all Africans, including those from poor countries, because administering vaccine only in South Africa when our brothers and sisters in the African continent are not vaccinated is meaningless. Vaccination and access to quality health care should be a human right, not privilege reserved for the rich and powerful. Let me tell you, Mr. President, our principle to support Africans who are here and all over the continent and in the diaspora will never be shaken by the so-called put South Africa first. We are Africans. There is nothing called South Africa. These borders were imposed on us by the nonsensical imperialists who knew that African unity will serve as a direct threat to imperialism and colonialism. If supporting Africans means we should lose vote, then so be it. If calling for vaccination of fellow African brothers and sisters means we lose these seats of parliament, let me go back to Masakane. I will not sit back and see Africans dying while South Africa can afford to vaccinate them because I want to vote. I call you and your so-called liberation movement that benefited a lot from Africa to rise and support the call of EFF to vaccinate all of Africa, particularly the poor countries that cannot afford, particularly Southern Africa, because we are one community. Those borders that all of you speak about are imaginary. You look now, you opened the borders yesterday, the 15th, yet there was no stampede at the borders. What does it tell you? They were already here because your gates are imaginary. They exist only in your not so big head. We call on the Department of Health and all health regulatory bodies for the regulation, professionalization, and mainstreaming of traditional African immunization and disease prevention mechanism such as steaming, lengana, and mutlonyana. Na re godishitse ke makgona tsotlhe re be re lwala re rema ke tlhogo bakgekolo ba re fa makgona tsotlhe ge re bolaya ke mala ba re fa makgona tsotlhe a re a godisha ke dipilisi tša makgowa jalo re dia boipiletšo ge le re ka nnete o movenda wa o rena wa go tswa venda wa o tseba ditlhare tša rena tše le dipheko gore na di bereka jwang gore re thušeng gore re berekana le di-dosage gore tlhare tša bo rena tše bo magolo a rena bokokosara ba rutileng tšona pele ba ya badimong re tšwele pele re di berekiša gore re se ka tshwara ke malwetši a re sa tsebeng a mangwe ba re a tswa China re sa tsebe re kopana kae le ba-China jalo re thuše re nyaka gore tlhare tša rena tša Sesotho nke di packagiwe gabotse le dosage tša gona di bontšhiwe gabotse gore di newa jwang gore di se ka eketša bolwetši di re okofatše ka mokgwelong gore re be re okofala le kgale ge e be re ja ditlharo tše le dipheko tše bakgekololo ba kgalabe ba re tlogeletšeng tšona makgowa ba di nyake ka go tseba gore ge re ka ja mešungwane ya rena tše le medu ke moka ditlhare tša bona tša sekgwa di ka sa rekiwa ba ka sa dia tšhelete rena re tšhabe go bolela gore re gotse ka legare re gotse re ja mešungwane re gotse re ja medu ka gore rena we are proud Africans a re kgantše ka dinaka tša go rwešwa tša go tshwana le tše wena o tsamayang o di rwele mogare a batho o re ko wena president o tseba ge o robetše bošeo o re a o qualify le go ba president. The South African government should play a leading role in the regularization and mainstreaming of proven scientific solutions that are part of African tradition. It is problematic, reactionary, and unacceptable for the government not to provide scientific guidance on alternative African methods of disease prevention and cure, whilst a large number of our people are depending on these solutions. We demand that All intellectual property rights on vaccines and generic medicines must be waived, because saving lives is the critical, in this critical period of a deadly virus, should not be in pursuit of profit. Capitalist greed and opportunism should in this age be replaced by the spirit of human solidarity. During the Cold War, rivals in the war collaborated to fight the pandemics of chickenpox and polio, and to a large extent succeeded. In this regard, all countries in the world should collaborate to vaccinate the whole world population. Otherwise, there will never be a lasting victory over coronavirus. We call on government to extend the provision of the basic income grant into permanent solution for all unemployed people in South Africa. We call for the increase of social grants for all people receiving social grants. We call for the introduction of a social and economic assistance program that will help small and medium enterprise-owned Black people, because the 200 billion loans guarantee announced as part of the imaginary 500 billion packages only benefited white people. We demand payment holidays for all people owing banks for houses and cars, and we demand payment holidays for all people paying rent. The payment holidays must be a national compulsory resolution applying to all the people and not left to the discretion of financial institutions. No one should, under this condition of pandemic, be dispossessed of their houses and cars due to the non-payment, because we are in a difficult situation economically and a lot of people have lost their jobs. If banks and financial institutions continue to dispossess our people of their houses and cars, they will force us into militant and radical action against all of you. Morana Ramaphosa, open the political space and ban the political activity, because the banks are doing as they wish. You are also doing as you wish, because you have deprived our people from occupying the streets. Open the political space so that we can go back to the picket lines and demonstrate to these banks that no one can defeat the power of the masses. Mr. President, local government elections in 2021 will not be free, fair, and transparent, because you have closed the political space. We cannot hold elections in a year where almost 3 months or 6 months. Speaker?
Thank you very much.
No. My time is not done. No, Speaker, my time is not done. No, Speaker. I told Floyd he must tell them to leave me until I exhaust my 40 minutes.
House Chairperson.
Yeah,
Deputy President of the Republic.
Point of order,
House Chair, my time is not exhausted.
Point of order, House Chairperson.
Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, Chairperson of the...
On a point of order, Chair. On a point of order.
On a point of procedure.
Any attempt to disrupt the sitting really.
You are out of order. There is no one who's disrupting a sitting here. We are calling a point of order as part of the procedure.
Point of order.
Don't talk nonsense.
Thank you very much. I stand on a point
of the House. This is not a disruption. Can you please take the point of order?
Opportunity to debate in this debate. So the Honorable of the EFF finished his speech and his time was over. So can we be please assisted in this House that those who are trying to disrupt this debate, they must be chucked out of this platform, so that other members...
It's exactly the nonsense you have planned. This nonsense of saying people must be taken out of the platform is an absolute rubbish. It's a suppression of the right to speak in this parliament.
Julius, We will therefore,
Chairperson, as EFF, we call a point of order. Please recognize us.
Order, Chairperson.
please proceed.
Can you please take a point of order, Chairperson? On the point of order.
Stood here on Thursday, he said, this is not
On a
the
point of order, Chairperson.
State of the Nation address, and in the same vein.
On a point of order, Chair.
Madam Chair,
It's allowed.
Chairperson of the House.
Oh. Chair,
again,
Chair, on a point of
On a point
order.
of order, Chairperson.
please,
Chair, just take a point of order and hear us out, because what.
But a point of order is allowed, Comrade Ambi.
Can you please allow a point of order?
Follow the rules, Chairperson. Follow the rules. Point of order is allowed.
Point of order.
It's called a point of order.
What
Can
kind
you
of
allow
person
the chief
can?
of the EFF to speak on a point of order?
the time is 8. Thank you very much.
Please take a point of order, Chairperson.
No, I'm not taking it. Please
Why?
proceed.
No, but you are allowed.
Chairperson, please respect the rules. Please respect the rules, Comrade Ambi. Respect the rules.
You did not do so when Julius spoke.
Must be muted so that we may.
The point of order.
Oh, but.
Recognize
That's
the
why I
point
don't
of
participate
order.
in this rubbish because it's a waste of time.
You who's muting, why
This illiterate, including this pensioner,
Doris,
just come
it's
here
a
and
point
talk
of
rubbish.
order. How come you want to
And we
speak
just
alone here,
suppress people
Doris?
like that.
Why
This is
can't you
rubbish.
speak alone, Doris?
Julius spoke alone. Julius spoke
Hey,
alone.
wait, when I'm a sheikh, man. Chairperson, you are calling a point of order. It's according to the rules.
Order.
Please.
Doris,
Recognize the EFF.
And Doris, you spoke here, no one said anything.
you can't speak alone on a point of order, Doris. You can't.
I think you must mute the mics. You all the mics.
Julius spoke alone.
Apply the rules. Apply the rules to make your work easy.
You switch off our mic. Point of order.
Chairperson, recognize the president according to point of
There
order.
is no EFF. There is a member of parliament.
I find it very.
Honorable members, I now order that all the mics that are on be switched off and that we proceed with the sitting.
Why are you doing this?
Why? You can't do that.
We stand here today in a high.
It's illegal. You can't do that.
When no one must also call a point of order in the house.
Yeah, can I?
Recognize the EFF.
You must follow the rules.
But why are we not allowed to do point of orders anymore?
Can you mute all the mics?
You are collapsing the
Why?
house.
Why are you muting us? This is the point of order.
Yeah, I now order that all mics be switched off.
Simple.
And that Honorable Chaveni proceed with addressing of the House. Please proceed.
Are the mics off?
Honorable Chairperson
Try and
of the
unmute.
NCOP, I need to request that the time that was taken when they were howling on my
Huh?
speaking time be restored. Because they were not muting the mics intentionally, even when you've given them an order to mute the mic. So I need my minute restored. Thank you. We stand here today in a hybrid parliamentary session during a global pandemic that has affected us all. We remember those who have departed and those who continue to battle with the coronavirus. I pay my respects to a colleague, the late minister in the presidency, Comrade Jackson Tembu, and fellow
Look at
honorable
the
members who
picture.
lost their lives due to this pandemic. The world fights the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. President, during the State of the Nation address, you highlighted progress in the implementation of some of the commitments that you had made in the previous
But I was
year.
almost
The
there,
presidency,
almost,
through the Department of Planning,
almost.
Monitoring and Evaluation, It's
I collapsed
finalizing
at,
the geospatial
paragraph
referencing
62.
guidelines to ensure location mapping for
I
all
was on
projects under
paragraph
implementation at
62
any
of-
given time. And this is critical for effective monitoring and evaluation, and
62
gives
of
us the
68, so
ability to
6
measure our progress towards the
paragraphs. Yeah, I was
development of
almost
our country.